And in Evidence Locker, I was asked to do a piece for the city of Liverpool, and I knew I wanted to work with the police again, and I wanted to go deeper this time because I still felt like I was an installer in that piece and kind of testing out my role with them. And I liked this idea of working with the police, but I wanted to become almost a performer again. I wanted to get involved more physically with the process and the camera. So anyways, I did this research and I found out that Liverpool had, at the time, the largest surveillance system in the world. In the city center alone, they had 242 surveillance cameras. And the way the system worked, basically, is that the police in the kind of town hall, or they were in charge of this program, City Watch. And the cameras, which were all over the city center, filmed the city in real time for 24 hours a day. After 24 hours a day, the footage went to time lapse, and it was held on the police computer for 31 days. After 31 days, that day is erased forevermore. And unless the police pull the image, the video files, or a citizen writes a subject access request form, which is the legal document that says who you are, where you were, what you were wearing, what time of day, and the incident that happened. So I started doing research and writing the chief of police that I was a researcher, which is a term that means nothing, and you can get absolutely away with anything because they don't know who you are, just that you're researching. And found out that there was kind of a glitch in the law that an incident wasn't a crime. Anything is an incident. Any observation is an incident. So I went to Liverpool for 31 days. And every day I wrote a subject access request form. But I filled it out like a diary entry or a love letter. So it always said, "Dear Observer." And I made sure in the entry to always say where I was, what I was wearing, which was always red, the time of day, and everything I observed, and I smelled, and I felt, and I experienced, and sent it to them. And by law, they had to read it and find me on the system and make an evidence locker for me. So the first letter I wrote them, I'll just read part of it. It says, "Dear Observer, make me a diary and keep it safe. Take care, it is mine. Hold this photograph of my face. Keep all of our entries in order. Put the letters in your desk file and the images in your evidence locker. You can edit everybody else out. Don't worry about finding me. I will help you. I will tell you what I was wearing, where I was, the time of day. If there was anything distinguishing about my look that day, I will make sure you know. Hold on to my diary for at least 7 years, which is the statute of limitations. I am enclosing a check. Use it for whatever expenses you may have. Sincerely, Jill Magid." And what happened is that the police got really into it, surprisingly, and they started following me all the time. And when I would walk down the streets, every single camera would turn. And then later on, I started hanging out with them in the CCTV control room and teaching them film theory, and especially Godard, which is one of my favorites, and telling them to film me like Bridget Bardot. And this day is Film Noir Day. And so I won't get into each piece, but it kind of culminates with a piece called Trust, which was a day that we had already set up a system where, because they started getting concerned for my safety, and they said to me one time, I closed my eyes in public space, and when I knew they were watching me. And later on, I went to the police, the CCTV control room, and they were like, "Oh my God, we were so worried about you when you closed your eyes, because if something happened to you, we could see it, but we couldn't tell you." And it's like, yeah, that's the problem of surveillance. But so I was like, okay, well, why don't we solve that by, I'll put a microphone behind my ear, and you guys can talk to me, and no one else in the public will know, but you can see me and talk to me, and you can tell me when I'm safe. So one day, I asked them if I could close my eyes and if they would lead me through their system, through the city, and they did it for 18 minutes. And it's quite an intimate piece called Trust. And for me, that's when it kind of overrides the system. Like once the police's eyes and the city became my eyes, there was no separation between me and the system itself. So it was quite an intimate piece. And then the letters culminate in a book This is me on the back of a cop's bike. That's the kind of ending. They ride me off the system. And this is a picture of its installation where you can read the book of letters. And it culminates in 4 video pieces, and that's all the pieces are edited from the police files by myself. And some of them are very cinematic. So that's another interest of mine, of taking this system of control and turning it into a cinematic space. So the last piece I'll talk about is the piece in the show here. It's called Lincoln Ocean Victor Eddy. And Lincoln Ocean Victor Eddy is part of the New York City police radio telephony language. So you know in the movies when they like say a license plate and they spell out the letters so there's no mistake. That's the radio telephony language. And this is the one for the New York City police. So Lincoln Ocean Victor Eddy is love. And for this piece, I had moved back to Amsterdam after 5 years and was questioning art a lot, I would say. It was a big difference to come back from Europe to Chelsea, and how the gallery system was functioning and all of that. So that was one thing I was questioning. And then I had missed 9/11. I lived in Amsterdam during that time, and I was amazed at the amount of police in the city. And I was especially attracted to the subway because of all the cops that just stand there and don't move. And I kept hearing the announcement that you've all heard that says, please be advised you may be subject to a search for security reasons. So I didn't quite know what I was going to do about this, but I just knew that it was interesting me. So I started walking up to police officers and asking them to search me. And so most of them were like, go away, you're weird. And then I went up to one and I just randomly said, will you search me? And he was like, what? And I said, will you search me? And he said, why do you want me to search you? And I said, because I heard the announcement that you might search me, so I'm ready, and I just want you to do it. And he was like, well, that's really weird, but I can't search you because you're a woman. And I didn't know that it was New York City law that a male cop can't search a woman. So I was really surprised, and I said, that's really interesting, I didn't know that. And it just came out where I said, I'm interested in that, can you train me? Can you teach me about your job? And he again thought it was very strange, but after a bit of a conversation, he wrote down a phone number and said to call him when he was on his shift later at 11:30 p.m. So anyways, I called him and he agreed to train me. And for the following 5 months, he worked the night shift in the New York City subway lines for one of the districts. And his whole job, the cops that are in the New York City subway system, their whole job, at least his job, is to watch the tunnels for terrorists. I don't make that up. Like, if there's a fight on the platform, they're actually not in charge of it, the people in his job. They're to watch for anyone going in and out of the tunnels. So for 12-hour shifts, they sit in a booth, or they sit on the platform and they stare at the tunnels. So they're basically a surveillance camera. And again, of course, I'm very interested in that. So I basically stayed with him during these shifts and watched the city through his eyes, through his way, and learned a different side of the city and what it meant for security, for him, and privacy, and all the issues that Michael was bringing up. And this is the booth we would sit in often, you know those booths that are at the edge? And I would always have to hide under this white thing when the sergeant came. But they started recognizing me anyways. They'd say, that's that girl from the tunnel. And I just kept a book, which became this book, Lincoln Ocean Victor Eddy, of this kind of romance with him in the system. And I say romance loosely, it would never make a good Harlequin. But it was more romance the same way I would call Evidence Locker was a romance with the city. To me, this intimate kind of observation becomes a romance. And of course it started pushing a lot of lines of what's acceptable and what's not. And so the last images I show are the ones here where this is me wearing his uniform. This is me learning how to use his gun. And this is the bullet he gave me from his gun, which for me is kind of the same thing as that video trust. It's kind of the whole fetishization of this relationship, that the amount of trust giving a bullet to me from his gun. So to me it becomes a very precious object and a symbol of this experience and this relationship. So I will leave it at that and pass it over to the McCoys. They can talk about their work. Thank you.